Oh, ever notice how the things that hurt us the most are often the things we can't let go of? That relationship that destroyed you, but you keep going back. That substance that numbs the pain, but leaves you emptier than before. That behavior you swore you'd stop, yet here you are again, repeating the same cycle. We call it addiction. We call it weakness. We call it self-sabotage. But what if I told you that Carl Jung saw something completely different in this pattern? What if your addiction isn't actually about the substance, the person, or the behavior at all? What if it's about something far deeper, something sacred that you've been ignoring your entire life? Jung spent decades studying the human psyche, and one of his most radical conclusions was this: addiction is a low-level spiritual search. It's not that you're weak. It's not that you lack willpower. It's that you're desperately trying to fill a void that was never meant to be filled by anything external. You're searching for God, for meaning, for transcendence, but you're looking in all the wrong places. And the pain you feel, that's not punishment. That's not bad luck. According to Jung, that pain is actually divine communication. It's God, the universe, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, trying to wake you up from a life you were never meant to live. Think about it. Every addiction starts with pain. Maybe it's the pain of loneliness. Maybe it's the pain of feeling inadequate. Maybe it's the pain of childhood trauma that you never processed. Maybe it's just the existential pain of being human and feeling disconnected from something greater. And in that moment of pain, you reach for something: a drink, a drug, a toxic relationship, endless scrolling on your phone, shopping, work, anything to make the pain stop. And for a moment, it works. For a brief second, you feel relief. You feel whole. You feel like you finally found what you were looking for. But then the moment passes, the high wears off, the relationship turns toxic again, the dopamine hit fades, and you're left even emptier than before. So what do? You go back. You chase that feeling again. You convince yourself that this time it will be different. This time it will last. This time it will finally fill the void. But it never does. And the cycle continues. The pain gets worse, the addiction gets stronger, and you start to believe that this is just who you are. This is your life. This is your fate. Jung would tell you that this is exactly where the transformation begins. Because that pain you're running from, that's not your enemy, that's your teacher, that's your guide, that's the divine knocking on the door of your consciousness, begging you to pay attention. In his book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung wrote that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. Read that again. Your addiction, your compulsive behavior, your self-destructive patterns, they're all substitutes. They're ways of avoiding the real pain, the real question, the real work that your soul is demanding from you. So what is that real work? It's the work of individuation. It's the work of becoming who you actually are, not who the world told you to be. It's the work of facing your shadow, integrating your wounds, and reconnecting with the sacred dimension of your existence. Jung believed that every human being has an innate religious instinct. Not religion in the sense of institutions and dogmas, but religion in the sense of reconnection. The word religion comes from the Latin religare, which means to bind back, to reconnect. We're born with this need to feel connected to something greater than ourselves. It's hardwired into our psychology, but here's the problem. Modern life has severed that connection. We live in a world that worships materialism, productivity, and external success. We're taught to ignore our inner lives, to push through pain, to medicate discomfort, to distract ourselves endlessly. We're taught that meaning comes from what we achieve, what we own, what others think of us. And so we spend our lives chasing things that can never satisfy the soul. We accumulate and consume and perform, and we wonder why we still feel empty inside. Jung saw this everywhere in his patients. Successful people, intelligent people, people who had everything the world said they should want, and yet they were miserable. They were anxious, depressed, addicted, lost. And when he dug deeper, he found the same thing every time. They had lost touch with the sacred. They had lost touch with meaning. They had lost touch with their own souls. And their symptoms, their addictions, their pain, were all desperate attempts to reconnect with what they had lost. He famously said that among all his patients in the second half of life, there has not been one whose problem in the last resort was not that of finding a religious outlook on life. Not one of them had been really healed who did not regain his religious outlook. This is from his book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. Think about what he's saying here. The core issue isn't the addiction itself. The core issue is spiritual starvation. You're trying to fill a God-shaped hole with things that were never meant to fit. And until you address that fundamental disconnection, no amount of willpower, no amount of rehab, no amount of self-help is going to permanently free you. Now, before you think this is some preachy religious talk, let me be clear. Jung wasn't talking about going to church or following a specific doctrine. He was talking about reconnecting with the numinous, the transcendent, the mysterious dimension of existence that gives life meaning. For some people, that might look like traditional religion. For others, it might look like meditation, nature, art, music, deep relationships, or simply the courage to face your own depths. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the experience of being part of something greater than your ego. And this is where pain becomes sacred. Because pain is what breaks through the illusion. Pain is what cracks open the ego's defenses. Pain is what forces you to ask the deeper questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? What am I avoiding? What am I running from? What is my soul trying to tell me? These are not comfortable questions. These are not questions you ask when life is going smoothly and you're numbing yourself successfully. These are questions that only arise when the pain becomes unbearable, when the addiction stops working, when you hit rock bottom and realize that you can't keep living this way. Jung called this the dark night of the soul. It's the moment when everything you thought you knew about yourself collapses. It's the moment when all your coping mechanisms fail. It's the moment when you're forced to confront the truth you've been avoiding, and it feels like death. It feels like you're losing yourself, but Jung would say that's exactly the point. You're not losing yourself. You're losing the false self, the ego, the mask you've been wearing to survive in a world that never saw the real you. And in that death, in that darkness, something new can be born. This is the alchemical process that Jung spent his life studying, the transformation of lead into gold, the death and rebirth, the descent into the underworld, and the return with treasure. Every myth, every fairy tale, every spiritual tradition tells the same story. You have to face the dragon to get the gold. You have to descend into hell to find heaven. You have to die to be reborn. And your addiction, your pain, your suffering, that's the call to adventure. That's the universe saying it's time. It's time to stop running. It's time to stop numbing. It's time to turn and face what you've been avoiding your whole life. But here's where most people get stuck. They think the goal is to get rid of the pain. They think the goal is to fix themselves, to become normal, to get back to how things were. But Jung would say that's missing the entire point. The goal isn't to get rid of the pain. The goal is to understand what the pain is trying to teach you. The goal is to let the pain transform you into who you're meant to become. In his work, Psychology and Alchemy, Jung wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Let that sink in. No coming to consciousness without pain. Your pain isn't a mistake. It's not a malfunction. It's not something to be medicated away as quickly as possible. It's the very mechanism of awakening. It's how the unconscious breaks through into consciousness. It's how the soul gets your attention when you've been ignoring it for too long. And yes, it's brutal. Yes, it's agonizing. Yes, it feels unfair, but it's also sacred. It's also necessary. It's also the beginning of your real life. Now let's talk about what addiction actually is from a Jungian perspective. Most people think addiction is about the substance or the behavior. You're addicted to alcohol. You're addicted to drugs. You're addicted to sex or shopping or social media. But Jung saw it differently. He saw addiction as misdirected spiritual longing. In a letter to Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Jung wrote that the craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language as the union with God. Read that again slowly. Your craving isn't really for the substance. Your craving is for wholeness. Your craving is for union with something greater. Your craving is for the experience of transcendence, of meaning, of connection to the divine. But because you don't know how to access that experience directly, because you've never been taught how to connect with the sacred, you reach for the nearest substitute. And substances, behaviors, relationships, they all provide a temporary taste of what you're actually looking for. They provide a brief escape from the ego. They provide a moment of relief from the burden of self-consciousness. They provide a fleeting sense of unity and peace. But it's counterfeit. It's a shadow of the real thing. It's like trying to satisfy hunger by looking at pictures of food. It might distract you temporarily, but it can never truly nourish you. And the more you chase it, the hungrier you become. The more you depend on it, the emptier you feel, until eventually the thing that was supposed to save you becomes the thing that's destroying you. And that's when you know. That's when you can't deny it anymore. You're not just dealing with a bad habit. You're dealing with a spiritual crisis. So what do you do? How do you break free? How do you transform this pain into something meaningful? Jung's answer was shadow work. He believed that everything we deny, repress, or refuse to acknowledge about ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes into the shadow, the dark side of our psyche that we don't want to look at. And the shadow grows stronger the more we ignore it. It starts running the show from behind the scenes. It drives our compulsions, our addictions, our self-sabotage. It's the part of us that does the thing we swore we'd never do. It's the part of us that betrays our own values. It's the part of us that we're most ashamed of. But here's the paradox. The shadow isn't just darkness. Hidden in the shadow is also your lost potential, your unlived life, your repressed creativity, your authentic power. Everything you were taught to hide, everything you learned was unacceptable, everything you sacrificed to fit in and be loved, it's all there waiting for you in the shadow. And the only way to reclaim it is to face it, to look at the parts of yourself you've been running from, to feel the feelings you've been numbing, to tell the truth you've been denying. Jung wrote in his book Psychology and Religion that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The latter procedure, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. He had a sense of humor about it, but he was also deadly serious. You don't heal by thinking positive thoughts and pretending everything is fine. You heal by descending into your own darkness and bringing it into the light of consciousness. You heal by owning your shadow, by integrating what you've rejected, by becoming whole instead of just good. And this is where the pain becomes your greatest ally. Because pain forces you to stop pretending. Pain forces you to get real. Pain forces you to ask the questions you've been avoiding. What am I really afraid of? What am I really angry about? What do I really want? What have I been sacrificing? What have I been settling for? What is my life actually about? These questions are terrifying because they reveal the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be. They reveal the ways you've betrayed yourself. They reveal the life you've been too scared to live, but they also reveal the path forward. Because once you see the truth, once you acknowledge what you've been denying, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to sleep. You can't keep living the lie. Something shifts inside you. Something wakes up. And that's the moment when transformation becomes possible. Not easy, but possible. Not comfortable, but real. Not quick, but lasting. Jung also talked about the concept of the self with a capital S. This is different from the ego, the small self, the personality we identify with. The self is the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, human and divine. It's the organizing principle of the psyche, the inner guide that knows who you're meant to become. And Jung believed that the self is constantly trying to communicate with us through symbols, dreams, synchronicities, and yes, through pain. When you're living out of alignment with yourself, when you're betraying your true nature, when you're living someone else's life instead of your own, the self sends signals. It sends anxiety, it sends depression, it sends restlessness, it sends addiction. These aren't signs that something is wrong with you. These are signs that you're living wrong. You're out of sync with your soul. And the pain is the correction signal, the course adjustment, the divine GPS trying to get you back on track. In his work, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung described a moment in his own life when he was paralyzed by depression and didn't know what to do. He decided to simply let himself sink into the darkness, to stop fighting it, to see where it would take him. And in that descent, he encountered powerful archetypal images and forces from his unconscious that transformed his entire understanding of himself and his life's work. He realized that his suffering wasn't meaningless. It was initiatory. It was preparing him for his purpose. This is the difference between suffering and neurosis. Suffering that you face, that you move through, that you allow to transform you, that's sacred, that's meaningful. That's the hero's journey. But suffering that you avoid, that you numb, that you run from, that becomes neurosis, that becomes addiction, that becomes a prison. Jung said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. You can't heal what you won't feel. You can't transform what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't be free from what you keep running from. So the invitation is this: stop running, stop numbing, stop pretending, turn around and face your pain. Ask it what it wants. Ask it what it's trying to teach you. Ask it what part of your life is out of alignment. Ask it what your soul is crying out for, and listen, really listen. Not with your head, but with your heart. Not with your ego, but with your deeper self. Because the answer is there. It's always been there. You've just been too afraid to hear it. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds great in theory. But how do I actually do this? How do I face my shadow? How do I work with my pain? How do I reconnect with the sacred? Jung's answer was simple, but not easy. You need a relationship with your unconscious. You need to start paying attention to your dreams, your fantasies, your slips of the tongue, your compulsive behaviors, everything that feels irrational, everything that doesn't make sense, everything that embarrasses you. That's where the gold is. That's where the unconscious is trying to speak. He developed a technique called active imagination, where you dialogue with the figures that appear in your inner world. You treat them as real, as intelligent, as having something important to tell you. You don't dismiss them as just random thoughts. You engage with them. You ask them questions. You listen to their answers. It sounds strange, maybe even crazy. But Jung found that this practice allowed people to access wisdom that their conscious mind could never reach on its own. It allowed them to integrate split-off parts of themselves. It allowed them to heal. Another key practice is what he called living symbolically. This means recognizing that your outer life is a reflection of your inner life. The people you attract, the situations you find yourself in, the patterns that keep repeating, they're all symbolic. They're all trying to show you something about yourself. Your toxic relationship isn't just bad luck, it's showing you where you abandon yourself. Your dead-end job isn't just unfortunate circumstances, it's showing you where you've given up on your dreams. Your addiction isn't just a chemical problem, it's showing you where you've lost touch with meaning. When you start seeing your life symbolically, everything becomes a teacher. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for growth. Every crisis becomes a call to transformation. Nothing is random. Nothing is meaningless. Everything is part of the larger story of your soul trying to become whole. And this perspective shift changes everything. Because now you're not a victim. You're not broken. You're not cursed. You're on a sacred journey. You're being initiated. You're being forged in the fire of your own becoming. Jung also emphasized the importance of ritual and ceremony. Modern culture has stripped away most of our rituals, and we're suffering for it. We have no rites of passage. We have no sacred containers for our pain. We have no communal recognition of life's major transitions. So we're left to process everything alone, in our heads, with no guidance and no support. And we wonder why we feel so lost. Jung believed that ritual serves a psychological function. It marks transitions. It honors thresholds. It gives form to formless experience. It connects us to something larger than ourselves. You don't need to join a church or follow someone else's tradition, but you do need to create your own rituals. Maybe it's a daily practice of meditation or journaling. Maybe it's a weekly session where you sit with your pain instead of distracting from it. Maybe it's a monthly check-in where you ask yourself the hard questions about whether you're living in alignment with your values. Maybe it's marking the anniversary of your sobriety or the ending of a toxic relationship with some kind of ceremony that honors how far you've come. These practices matter. They signal to your unconscious that you're serious, that you're paying attention, that you're committed to the work of becoming whole. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Jung didn't believe the goal was to cure addiction. He believed the goal was to understand what the addiction was trying to accomplish and find a healthier way to meet that need. In other words, your addiction isn't the enemy. Your addiction is a misguided attempt at self-medication, at transcendence, at connection. The solution isn't to just remove the addiction. The solution is to find what the addiction was substituting for and give yourself that instead. If you're drinking to escape loneliness, the solution isn't just to stop drinking. The solution is to face your loneliness, to understand why you're afraid of connection, to do the work of building real relationships. If you're using drugs to feel alive, the solution isn't just sobriety. The solution is to find what actually makes you feel alive and build a life around that. This is why white-knuckling it doesn't work. This is why willpower alone fails. Because you're still trying to fight the symptom instead of addressing the cause. You're still at war with yourself. You're still treating part of yourself as the enemy. But Jung would say that's the opposite of healing. Healing is integration, not amputation. Healing is making peace with all parts of yourself, even the parts that scared you, even the parts that brought you to your knees. Because those parts are trying to protect you. They're trying to meet a need. They're trying to help, even if their methods are destructive. So instead of rejecting your addiction, instead of hating yourself for it, what if you got curious about it? What if you asked it what it wants? What if you thanked it for trying to help you survive, and then gently showed it a better way? This is radical compassion. This is treating yourself like you would treat a frightened child. You don't yell at a child for being scared. You don't shame a child for not knowing better. You hold them. You comfort them. You show them there's another way, and slowly, with patience and love, they learn, they heal, they grow. One of Jung's most beautiful concepts is what he called the wounded healer. He believed that your wounds are not disqualifications from helping others. They're your qualifications, the pain you've survived, the darkness you've walked through, the demons you've faced. These are what make you capable of helping others do the same. Your scars are proof that healing is possible. Your story is medicine for someone who's still in the dark. And this reframes everything, because now your suffering wasn't for nothing. It wasn't random. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It was training. It was the initiation you needed to become who you're meant to be. This doesn't mean you had to suffer. This doesn't mean suffering is good or that you should seek it out. But it does mean that since you did suffer, since you did go through hell, you might as well extract the meaning from it. You might as well let it transform you. You might as well use it as fuel for your purpose, because the alternative is to let it destroy you, to let it define you as broken and damaged and less than. And that would be the real tragedy. Not that you suffered, but that you suffered and learned nothing. That you went through the fire and came out the same. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your parents wanted you to be, not who society expected you to be, not who you thought you should be, but who you truly are at the deepest level of your being. And the path to that true self always goes through the shadow. It always goes through the pain. It always goes through the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. There's no shortcut. There's no bypass. The only way out is through. And here's the thing about that journey. Once you start it, once you commit to it, once you stop running and start facing, something miraculous happens. The pain starts to transform. Not disappear, but transform. It becomes wisdom. It becomes compassion. It becomes depth. It becomes the very thing that makes you real, that makes you human, that makes you capable of connecting with others on a level that wasn't possible before. People who've never suffered are shallow. They can't hold space for real pain because they've never sat with their own. But people who've walked through hell and come out the other side, they're different. They have gravity. They have presence. They have something real to offer. This is what Jung meant when he said that God speaks through your pain. It's not that God causes your pain. It's not that God wants you to suffer. It's that God, the divine, the sacred dimension of reality, can only reach you when your ego defenses are down. And pain is what brings those defenses down. Pain is what cracks you open. Pain is what makes you humble enough, desperate enough, real enough to finally listen. And what you hear in that listening might save your life. It might reveal your purpose. It might show you who you're meant to become. So if you're in pain right now, if you're struggling with addiction, if you're wondering why this is happening to you, I want you to consider this possibility. What if this is your call? What if this is your initiation? What if this is the universe trying to get your attention because you're meant for something more than the life you've been living? What if your addiction isn't a sign that you're weak, but a sign that you're strong enough to survive the transformation that's trying to happen? What if your pain isn't punishment but preparation? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying you chose this or that you deserve this. But I am saying that you have a choice right now. You can keep running, keep numbing, keep pretending, and stay stuck in the cycle. Or you can stop. You can turn around. You can face what you've been avoiding. You can ask the hard questions. You can do the work. You can let this pain transform you into someone you never imagined you could become. And if you choose that path, if you choose the path of consciousness, the path of integration, the path of becoming whole, you won't be alone, because this is the oldest story in the world. Every hero, every saint, every wise person who ever lived walked this same path. They descended into darkness. They faced their demons. They died and were reborn. And they came back with a gift for the world. They came back as healers, as teachers, as guides for others who are still lost in the dark. This could be your story too. This pain you're in, this addiction you're fighting, this darkness you're walking through, it could be the beginning of your greatest transformation. It could be the crucible that forges you into your true self. It could be the very thing that qualifies you to do the work you were born to do. But only if you stop seeing it as your enemy and start seeing it as your teacher. Only if you stop trying to escape it and start learning from it. Only if you let it break you open so something new can emerge. Now here's what I want to be clear about. This isn't the only way to understand addiction and pain. Jung's perspective is one lens among many. Modern neuroscience has shown us the biological mechanisms of addiction. Trauma research has revealed the role of adverse childhood experiences. Social science has documented the impact of poverty, isolation, and systemic oppression. All of these perspectives are valid. All of them offer important insights. Jung's spiritual and psychological framework doesn't negate these other understandings. It complements them. It adds a dimension that purely materialist explanations miss. Some people find tremendous healing through medical treatment, through therapy, through 12-step programs, through community support. And that's beautiful. That's necessary. Jung would never say that spiritual work replaces practical interventions, but he would say that if you only treat the symptoms and never address the soul, you'll never be truly free. You might manage your addiction, but you'll still feel empty. You'll still feel like something's missing. Because what's missing isn't just sobriety or stability. What's missing is meaning. What's missing is connection to something greater. What's missing is a sense of purpose that makes your life worth living even when it's hard. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Question everything, including what I'm telling you right now. Jung would want you to think for yourself, to find your own truth, to walk your own path. He wasn't trying to create followers. He was trying to awaken individuals to their own unique journey of becoming whole. And that journey looks different for everyone. Your pain has something specific to teach you. Your addiction is pointing you towards something particular that your soul needs. Your path of healing will be your own, but whatever path you choose, don't waste your pain. Don't let it be for nothing. Extract the wisdom from it. Let it change you. Let it deepen you. Let it make you more compassionate, more real, more alive. Because at the end of your life, the question won't be whether you suffered. Everyone suffers. The question will be whether you let that suffering transform you or whether you let it harden you. Whether you used it as fuel for growth or as an excuse to stay small. Whether you heard what it was trying to tell you or whether you spent your whole life running from the only voice that could set you free. This is Carl Jung's vision. A vision where pain is sacred, where addiction is misdirected spiritual hunger, where your wounds are the doorway to your healing, and where God speaks most clearly in the moments when we're most broken. It's a challenging vision, an uncomfortable vision, but also a deeply hopeful one. Because it means that nothing you've been through is wasted. It means that your darkest moments can become your greatest teachers. It means that the very thing that almost destroyed you might be the thing that saves you. And now I want to hear from you. Does this perspective resonate with your experience? Have you noticed patterns in your life where pain was actually trying to guide you towards something? Do you see your struggles differently now? Drop a comment below and let's continue this conversation. And if this video helped you in any way, if it gave you a new way of looking at your pain, share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to keep exploring these deep questions with me, because we're all walking this path together. We're all trying to make sense of our suffering, and we're all searching for meaning in a world that often feels meaningless. Let's keep searching together.